Hi, I'm MiJuEun from the Department of American Studies. Today is May 1st and we will begin the Bingtushu News. Today as well, I am MiJuEun, keeping a close watch on the trends of American stock investors without any change. Thank you for joining us for the first broadcast of May. This month as well, I will do my best to provide you with useful information that can help many of you in your investment activities, so that our broadcast can be meaningful. Is today the first broadcast of May? I think I should start by sharing my honest thoughts, but it seems like I delivered some incorrect information to many of you during the last broadcast. Today, I watched a broadcast by Representative Kim Min-jung, and there was something mentioned. In the last video, there was a part where I needed to correct the information about the event price, so I want to clarify that now. The first discount is 50%, making it 20,000 won, and after that, it's a 40% discount, so the price will be 24,000 won. The 50% discount is only for a limited time event, so it's difficult to maintain the 50% discount at price every year. If we change the price to 50% for those who joined at the existing 40% price, even though some of them paid a deposit, it could cause confusion in the pricing system, so it's more reasonable to keep it as it is. That's why we're maintaining it this way. Previously, there was no notice in the explanation during the event, but this time there may be a notice, so I'm letting you know in advance. For the first time, it's a 50% discount, and for the second and subsequent times, it's a 40% flat discount. So they asked me to explain it one more time. Mr. Kim In-jung also asked me to deliver the information that was not properly conveyed, so I am sharing it with all the subscribers. This time, I said something wrong on yesterday's broadcast. The rumor that the Sihyung Alpha is proceeding with the sale is not true. I heard this information and mistakenly delivered it as if the sale was actually happening. So when I was promoting together with Representative Kim Min-jung and delivering the information quickly, I couldn't double-check the details thoroughly. So regarding the confusion I caused, I would like to sincerely apologize once again. If you join now, you'll get a 50% discount for the first year, paying 200,000 won. After that, you can continue as a regular member with a 40% discount paying 240,000 won annually. And as for this message, Kim In-jung, the representative, seems to watch American broadcasts every day. That's right. So, to Kim In-jung, who watches American broadcasts every day, I would like to express my gratitude once again. Let's start today's Big 2 news, recorded on May 1st. Today I will summarize the current United States-China relations. Let's take a look at the S&P 500 chart first. Yesterday was also an upward trend, making it 7 consecutive days that the S&P 500 closed with a plus. The overall market performance yesterday was very good. Most sectors closed in the plus, shown in green, but if you look here, only the energy sector is marked in red. There is a reason why the energy sector performed weakly like this. Starting in May, there was an announcement that oil production would increase. Even though nothing has happened recently, oil prices have dropped by as much as 20% in just 1 month. Therefore, the possibility of oil prices recovering in the short term has significantly decreased. That's what you can see here. Then the United States gross domestic product was announced, but the economic growth rate turned out to be minus. Due to complex reasons for slow growth, the recovery of energy prices was expected to be even slower, negatively impacting energy sector stocks and turning them bearish. That's how you should view the situation. Right now I'm showing you several S&P 500 charts, and on the surface, the S&P 500 has rebounded by about 0.15%, so it looks like it has recovered a bit. By the way, some of you in Korea watching now may be checking the United States stock market late at night. I'm sure some of you already know this. Byun Dong-sung was right next to me. If you look at the chart here, you'll see that it soared dramatically at the beginning, then fluctuated a lot, and finally ended up falling. It recovered by 24%, and we saw the United States stock market turn positive. The drop was even worse, but in the beginning, it plunged more than 2%, then kept going down, and eventually, after falling more than 28%, it recovered to almost 0.086%. So it ended up in the minus, but if you look at the recovery, it was amazing. At first, everyone was selling off at a low price. And that's what happened. Looking at it this way reveals what occurred. During the United States market, in the beginning, all sectors were in the minus, but later, 8 sectors turned to plus. Palantir led with a 2.03% increase, followed by Uber at 2%, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company at 1.34%, and 1.1% closing at 95,250. NVIDIA was up 0.69%, Broadcom up 0.68%, Talon Energy up 0.53%, and 0.23%. The rest of the stocks ended in the minus, but NVIDIA had a minor drop of 0.09%. Strategy fell 0.35%, Credit Technology 0.37%, Alphabet 0.85%, Meta 0.98%, Amazon 1.58%, Celestica 1.95%, ProShares, Ultra Bitcoin Exchange, Traded Fund 2.70%, Tesla 3.38%, and Nextracker was the worst, down 5.71%. Today on the broadcast, I'll explain why United States stock investors didn't seem to be paying much attention to the roller coaster ride. Yesterday, the two indicators were announced one after another, but there was a time gap between them. First, the United States first quarter gross domestic product growth rate was announced, and it showed negative growth. According to projections by the United States Department of Commerce's Bureau of Economic Analysis, the country's gross domestic product for first quarter 2025 is as follows. Compared to the previous quarter, gross domestic product showed a negative growth of 0.3%. The consensus was a plus 0.2%, so the results that were announced are completely different from what the market expected. And since it was plus 2.4% in the fourth quarter of 2024, you can see how rapidly the economy is shrinking in just one quarter when you look at it this way. If you look here, the preliminary figures are coming out, but gross domestic product is revised a total of 3 times in a row. The first announced figure is preliminary, followed by the second, and the final figure comes third. That's how to interpret the sequence. Even though it's just a preliminary figure, the fact that the current gross domestic product is minus 0.3 is a very shocking result. The United States economy was already nearing a recession, and the sense of crisis has intensified. Therefore, the tech stocks have been hit the hardest. In the case of Nasdaq, it dropped more than 2%, but this additional drop was mainly due to the financial sector. The reason is it's because of the PC inflation index announcement. As I mentioned recently, among many economic indicators, personal consumption expenditures is currently considered the most important. The reason is, if the personal consumption expenditures goes down, it means inflation is under control, and that gives us hope. So, when the PC results were announced for the second time, the United States stock market first dropped and then succeeded in rebounding. This is what you can see here. Even though the Fed has been signaling that inflation indicators are improving in just 1 year and 3 months, consumer spending has remained strong, and the market has provided a surprising rebound from the expected downturn. Therefore, you could easily see signs of relief in the investment market. This is the right perspective. Here, it's neatly organized in a table. There are 2 main types of personal consumption expenditures indices. The first is the headline personal consumption expenditures, which is calculated by adding up all the components. And if you remove the core, meaning food and energy, from the front, it's called the core personal consumption expenditures. Volatility is primarily driven by energy and food products. Excluding these and recalculating the inflation rate yields the core inflation index, which provides a more accurate perspective. First, if you look at the headline personal consumption expenditures, it's 0.0 compared to the previous month, which means there was no inflation. The market's expectations were also 0.0, exactly in line with predictions. Compared to last year, the market expected plus 2.2%, and the actual figure was 2.3%. Because of this slight difference, it seemed like inflation was getting stronger. The headline is just as it is, but what's more important is the core PC that the Fed pays attention to. If you look at the core PC index, compared to last month, it was 0.0, so there was no inflation at all, while the market expected 0.1% plus. So, inflation hardly occurred at all, which the market was expecting, but there was no inflation. This portion is also quite optimistic, matching the market's 2.6% projection compared to the previous year. And the good news didn't end there. Right below that, you can see real consumer spending. This is the current state of consumer spending. When calculating consumer spending, if you add real income first and then calculate it again after adjusting for inflation. If you look at the actual spending figures, they went up by 0.7% compared to last month. The 0.5% market expectation was not met, indicating that consumers are still holding back and spending has slowed more than anticipated. So, when we calculate the current gross domestic product, the most important thing is consumer spending, which is why we're talking about this. We can't be entirely sure about it yet. The reason why we saw strong minus growth in the gross domestic product for the first quarter was because exports decreased. Let me explain once again how gross domestic product is calculated. First, it's the spending by individuals, then government spending, and then investment is added. Finally, you compare exports and imports. If exports are higher, that's a plus, and if imports are higher, that's a minus. But in the case of the first quarter right now, there was a huge amount of imports before the tax was implemented. Because of that, the gross domestic product didn't drop into the minus, and that's how you should look at it. The most important thing was that consumer spending was still showing a very strong trend. This part can be interpreted as positive. I tried to transliterate MiJuEun's words as accurately as possible. This is my first time, but I tried to express it like this. The United States' Q1 gross domestic product showed negative growth, and only PC inflation accelerated. Similar situations occurred in past recessions. Even in the investment market where investors await a rebound, the outlook has been very pessimistic. But fortunately, both the headline PC and the core PC showed signs of slowing down. Thanks to strong personal consumption driven by monetary easing, there is now a chance that the United States economy could recover. This is how it's possible. Today is the first day of May. So, at the beginning of every month, I share information about two portfolios with the members who haven't seen it yet. The first is the current status of the portfolio's asset allocation. You can see in detail which industries the funds are currently allocated to and which stocks I am currently adding to the portfolio. The second piece of information is the portfolio's rate of return. I continuously share the status of this rate of return with subscribers through YouTube broadcasts. The reason I continue to share the investment performance for 1 year and for each month at the beginning of every month is because there is value in doing so. This allows people to directly verify the effectiveness of the MiJuEun momentum strategy. Presenting it this way enables you to see for yourself. For example, in some cases, I bought 3 stocks and I added 2 more stocks. Among the stocks I hold, there are those I buy and those I sell. The stocks I sell are usually the ones whose momentum has slowed down a lot. And the stocks I buy additionally are the ones with the best recent price momentum among the stocks I already hold. I continue to replace stocks in this way to make sure my portfolio always has stocks with strong momentum. So, if you look at it this way, I'm investing in this manner. Usually, if the stock price drops, I sell it, and if it goes up, I keep holding on to it. Conversely, many argue that investing in the opposite manner can still yield good returns. To illustrate this, I'm presenting various scenarios where different investment approaches can generate returns. And the way I disclose my returns is by showing them on the screen with a captcha. This view reflects all real investment returns, including new and additional purchases, profits, losses, and dividends presented together for your review. So, I will also disclose to you all how much profit I make in a month or 4 months. At the end of March 2025, the total amount of stocks I held was 804.2 million won, and by the end of April, it had increased to 912.2 million won. Among that, 30 million won was not investment income, but rather the cash I newly deposited. Due to the poor stock market performance, I invested 30 million won in cash. That's what happened. The investment income was about 39.7 million won, which is roughly 40 million won. The monthly income rate was 4.57%. Next, I'll show you the investment results from the past year. In the second period, which is currently just 1 month, it was 4.57%, but since last month's performance wasn't good, the cumulative return for the past year has dropped to 19.15%. Periodic income is generating a small amount of cash flow every month. Now let's analyze these results by comparing them to the benchmark in the market. Comparing the MiJuEun portfolio's returns to the benchmark over the past year, starting from May 1st, reveals the difference in performance. The S&P 500 returned plus 10.97%, NASDAQ plus 11.8%, while the MiJuEun Momentum portfolio showed a return of plus 19.15%. And if we compare the returns of the United States stock market benchmark and the MiJuEun portfolio over the past month in April, the S&P 500 had a minor increase of 0.51%, while NASDAQ rose slightly by 1.31%. And as I showed you before, MiJuEun's Momentum portfolio ended with a plus 4.57% return. Personally, I am satisfied with the performance for April. The reason is that in MiJuEun's portfolio, the most heavily weighted stock was NVIDIA. However, NVIDIA ended up with a minus for the month of April. So even though NVIDIA was in the minus, other stocks like Palantir, Strategy, Bitu, and Tesla performed well, allowing us to outperform the S&P 500 and Nasdaq. Personally, I am satisfied with this result, and I wanted to organize my thoughts like this. Despite this, in first quarter 2025, it is expected to decline by 22 to 31% in just 3 months. At that time, my real profit was just around 220 million won. So last month, I recovered 40 million won, but the road ahead is still long. If you look at it this way, that's how it is. But I want to deliver this message once again to everyone. The stock market risk mentioned is volatility, which has been significant recently, especially in cases like yesterday. We need to be aware of this aspect. Experiencing volatility firsthand helped us understand why it's a risk that can make stock investors anxious in real life. Many investors who watch this broadcast with me probably have portfolios made up mainly of United States tech stocks, and growth stocks. If you built your portfolio with stocks that have high volatility like this, I think it's a sign that you are willing to take on investment risk, endure anxiety, and accept these kinds of uncertainties. So that's when adjustments need to be made. If you can't handle the volatility that you chose on your own, in the end, volatility becomes a risk, and you might end up selling your stocks impulsively in a short period of time, which is the worst possible outcome. But if we understand volatility as just one of the characteristics of growth stocks or tech stocks, or as a natural phenomenon, and if we can accept it that way, then volatility is no longer a risk. If that's the case, volatility can become an opportunity for investors, and it can actually maximize our investment returns. This is one of the chances that can come our way, so let's try to embrace volatility in this way. The S&P 500, which has been rising for 7 consecutive days, is showing the possibility of continuing its upward trend for an 8th straight day today. The closing prices of major indices show the 0.75%. The S&P 500 futures rose 1.18% and the 1.7%. The reason why all 3 major United States stock index futures are showing a sharp upward trend like this is because there is a specific reason behind it. It's because of the earnings results that were just announced yesterday. I mentioned this yesterday, and as I said on the broadcast, there are 2 important things this week. The first was the personal consumption expenditures results that we were waiting for right before the market opened, and the second was the earnings of the mega tech companies. And yesterday, among the most important companies, 2, Meta and Microsoft, announced their earnings. As we look at the solid earnings results from both companies, the market is showing a positive trend. The stock price is rising due to this, as shown. Many people may not know which sectors are leading the United States and China. When I think about it, I think of companies like Amerex India and Tesla. In the case of Tesla, from 2020 to 2022, it was the sector with the highest inflow of funds and the most attention in the United States portfolio. And then, in November 2022, Pyogen Product Development appeared. And after that, the number 1 stock in the United States portfolio was immediately NVIDIA. So now when you think of the United States, you usually think of just these 2 stocks. But in reality, the United States all-in-one members that I am running are not like that. Also, if you listen carefully to my broadcasts, you'll notice that there is another stock I emphasize even more. It's Meta. In the case of Meta, I am gradually reducing my content exposure on the broadcast. The reason is that unlike what you might expect, Korean viewers generally aren't very interested in Meta. So, in order to increase the number of clicks, I've been intentionally holding back on mentioning Meta too much. However, Meta is a stock that over the past 2.5 years has increased by about 5 times. It's an incredibly strong stock. So when it comes to a stock like Meta, if more people start to take an interest in it, I'll make sure to share the results with everyone so that you can all benefit from it together. So now what about cases where you just sell in one day? I saw 42.31 billion, 4.23 trillion in sales, and currently the market consensus was slightly lower at 41.36 billion, so it was recorded as a beat. As a result, an additional 1 trillion in sales was generated. That's surprising news. The strong earnings per share was reported at $6.43, significantly exceeding the market's previous expectation of only $5.22, beating the forecast by a wide margin. As a result, operating profit grew by 27%, and the operating margin also improved significantly from 38% to 41% year over year. Net profit also increased by 35%. The net margin was much higher than expected, beating analysts' forecasts by a wide margin. That's how you can see it. Now, there's another key indicator to pay attention to, which is the number of daily active users. We call this daily active users. Meta owns several platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Messenger. We're referring to the combination of all these platforms. So, how many people use Meta's platforms every day? If you look at the statistics, on average, it's 3.43 billion people. Compared to the same period last year, it has increased by around 6%. Now, the fact that more than 1/3 of the world's population continues to use this platform and that it keeps growing is truly an incredible achievement. You can see it that way. Now, in addition, the advertising revenue from the YouTube app has also grown by about 5% compared to the same period last year. Another decisive factor is that the price of ads increased by approximately 10%. Despite the increasing number of ads and a 10% rise in price per ad, maintaining this growth level is remarkable. That's the right perspective. And the profit margin was also very good. Gadian forecasted sales of around $45.5 billion, an increase from $42.5 billion. And the decisive part is this. This is an upward adjustment from last quarter's announcement, significantly higher than the consensus of $41.36 billion. Guardian also made this announcement. Now, even just looking at the earnings report and also in the earnings call, you could see a lot of positive news. Through different articles, I will introduce the details and performance more specifically to everyone. First of all, do you know who the Chief Executive Officer Mark Zuckerberg is? They are improving advertising efficiency through artificial intelligence investment, providing immersive experiences, strengthening the messaging business, advancing Meta artificial intelligence, and launching artificial intelligence devices. These are the 5 main pillars. This is how Meta is currently progressing so well. Now, following that, thanks to Real's recommendation model, the conversion rate of ads has increased by 5%. Advertisers using artificial intelligence creative tools saw their return on ad spend increase by nearly 30%. So, we are an artificial intelligence company, and we are emphasizing this. And recently, the number of monthly active users of the social platform Nold has surpassed 35 million, recording explosive growth. Nold has been doing remarkably well, and its growth is accelerating, though I'm unsure how they've achieved this success. Participation in artificial intelligence-related Facebook groups is at 7%, and Instagram is also continuing with 6% participation. Now, it's not just about Google. In the past, when you thought of Facebook, many people imagined it as an old-fashioned platform, but thanks to artificial intelligence, it's now regaining its momentum. As you can see, this is what's happening. Recently, Meta Artificial Intelligence has been released as an app, but Meta Artificial Intelligence was already embedded in various platforms, quietly increasing its user base. The number of active users of Meta Artificial Intelligence has already surpassed 100 million, so there are already 100 million people chatting with Meta Artificial Intelligence. That's how you should see it. Before monetization, their focus was on boosting user participation and expanding service coverage. Therefore, they are not expecting to generate revenue from Meta Artificial Intelligence just yet. They believe that with continued usage, it will keep growing, which is their current aim. And there's another artificial intelligence feature that's been added, called Ray-Ban. Smart glasses are still in their early stages, but the sales of the new model have tripled compared to last year. In the near future, smart glasses have the potential to become the most advanced technology in the world. When it comes to smartphones, the products we usually think of aren't actually smart glasses, but experts are saying that smart glasses could soon become our #1 smart device. The total sales volume was 42.3 million units, with a current cumulative sales volume of 10.3 million units. The surplus allowed for a share buyback of around $13.4 billion, but there aren't many industries right now that generate this much cash, so you can see why it's called a meta company. This time I think we need to talk about reducing expenses. What about the overall expenses in 2025? It's expected to be lower than the original estimate, around 1.13 trillion to 1.18 trillion won. Well, the most important factor is the cost. As I mentioned before, the sales forecast for Q2 has been revised upward. To reiterate, sales are anticipated to exceed previous projections, as previously stated. We said that we would be able to control costs. That was the explanation. This is breaking news. But at the same time, we are saying that operational efficiency is improving and that costs are continuing to increase due to artificial intelligence. That's how it was explained. And on the other hand, MiJuEun's guidance was adjusted from $6.4 billion to $7.2 billion due to data center investment expansion and increased infrastructure costs. Overall costs, the necessary expenses for running the business, have decreased. This indicates improved operational efficiency and productivity, which can be interpreted positively. The second capital expenditure is known as CapEx. We're reducing large-scale capital for investment in the future. This means we will strengthen our investments, make more money, and thus be able to pay back the future. You can interpret this as a positive message. From a financial perspective, while some areas are growing rapidly, overall administrative expenses have risen by 34%. However, sales and marketing expenses like advertising have decreased. So, we can expect that the company is currently operating more efficiently. I'll go ahead and explain in more detail. In my view, the initial section of the Meta Platforms analysis is getting largely favorable reviews, which I concur with. The introduction of artificial intelligence on based advertising features has led to outstanding results, which is the most important factor. The era of personalized advertising is already here. Few industries can directly benefit from it, but Meta is uniquely positioned to do so. This is the reality of the situation. With the newly applied artificial intelligence recommendation model, the conversion rate of Reels ads increased by 5%, and the number of advertisers using artificial intelligence creative tools increased by 30%. It's a very positive sign. This demonstrates that artificial intelligence investment is not merely a technological endeavor, but is driving increased sales and concrete outcomes, revealing its significant impact. And Chief Executive Officer Yongjin adjusted the second quarter sales forecast from 42.5 billion to 45 billion won. This also reflects the confidence that advertising and artificial intelligence services will continue to see strong demand. And these results clearly show that Meta is continuing its steady growth momentum in the advertising sector thanks to the rapid expansion of its artificial intelligence capabilities. Meta is making money through artificial intelligence, as you can see here. Even when considering Q2 sales performance costs were well controlled, this is crucial. Soo-Yui-seong, Mark Zuckerberg expressed his confidence that this growth will continue. For 2025, the previous capital expenditure forecast of $60-65 billion was raised to $64-72 billion, strongly expressing the intention to become the leading artificial intelligence company. I'm interpreting it this way. Up until now, this is the current situation, and these are the earnings results for the first quarter of 2025 for Meta, which is leading the metaverse in the United States. Recently, Meta and other major artificial intelligence players, including Microsoft, have announced their earnings, and the results have been impressive. I'll try to explain the key points as simply as possible. Sales were $70.06 billion, beating the consensus of $68.44 billion. And for earnings per share, the consensus was 3.22 cents, but the actual result was 3.46 cents. Well, if you just look at the numbers, it looks really good. Microsoft's cloud generated $42 billion in sales, which is a 22% increase compared to the same period last year, and it exceeded expectations for the quarter. Productivity and business process sales reached $29 billion, which is a 7% increase compared to last year. Now, this growth was led by Microsoft, 365, and LinkedIn, so LinkedIn's growth has also accelerated. That's positive news. The most crucial aspect is the intelligent cloud sales, as anticipated. It reached 26.8 trillion won, a 33% increase from the previous year. If you look at the growth rate by region, it was also 33%. And out of Azure's 33% growth, artificial intelligence contributed a significant 16 points. Artificial intelligence currently contributes almost half, with 16 out of 33 coming from artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence's significant role is evident. Now, there's also an artificial intelligence platform that Microsoft is running. In the case of Fabric, there are about 20,000 paid customers in total. If so, that's an 80% increase from last year. In the platform called Foundry, there are currently 70,000 companies using it. And the number of tokens being processed is 10 billion, which is 5 times more than last year. So an enormous number of tokens are currently being used. Artificial intelligence is not just a theory, but is growing and developing, as demonstrated by Microsoft right now. I aim to make it easy to understand, even for those unfamiliar with the topic. Meta's earnings are similar, and as for Microsoft's earnings, from the perspective of investors who invest mainly in artificial intelligence beneficiaries, the outlook is also positive in many ways. First of all, Microsoft's cloud service Azure is doing well. In the third quarter, it grew by 33% compared to the same period last year. It exceeded market expectations. And a significant part of this growth came from artificial intelligence services, which means that Microsoft's artificial intelligence strategy is actually paying off. This clearly shows that their artificial intelligence business is becoming a real source of revenue, so we can evaluate it positively. Guidance growth is also strong. MiJuEun's announces the results quarterly and annually. They announced the operating margin will increase from 34% to 35%, demonstrating their confidence. In addition, they announced that they will continue to expand their own investments and that they plan to manage the growth rate of expenses together with profitability and efficiency. They said they will continue to focus on productivity through metaverse and artificial intelligence and that they have such a plan in place. The continued investment in artificial intelligence infrastructure can ultimately be interpreted as a long-term move. Once again, NVIDIA sales continue to rise. As you can see, that's the case. MiJuEun's secured artificial intelligence orders in a specific region. They said artificial intelligence chip supply isn't meeting demand, which Microsoft confirmed. That's why They have added new data centers in 10 countries around the world. Going forward, data centers will continue to increase. This is why we can anticipate such positive news. Finally, the number of artificial intelligence platform users like Fabric and Foundry, as well as the amount of processed data, have each increased by more than 80% and 5 times compared to the previous year. That's how you explain it. Companies across nearly all industries are rapidly adopting artificial intelligence solutions to remain competitive in the current era, where artificial intelligence has become essential for survival. This encapsulates the present situation. When all factors are combined, the investment logic for artificial intelligence beneficiaries is deemed reasonable, as confirmed by Microsoft during their earnings announcement. So, in our situation, whether you invested in Broadcom, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or NVIDIA, it was a moment that gave you confidence once again. Earlier, through Meta and Microsoft's earnings results, we were once again able to firmly reassure ourselves about our confidence in investing in artificial intelligence beneficiaries. So the article prepared this time is titled, "Are you confident in your artificial intelligence-related investments?" This article discusses the morality and advisability of continued investment in artificial intelligence beneficiaries. For this article, I've included a summary so that you can read along with the original artificial intelligence article. At the end, I'll also share my personal opinion in a simple and honest way. Please make sure to check until the very end. This is the first broadcast of May. Today, as expected, the results of the fierce competition have been announced. Apple and Amazon are announcing their earnings today. As companies like Amazon announce good earnings results, the upward momentum of the United States stock market continues. Let's keep hoping together until the day we all retire from investing in the United States stock market. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Diva, the joint venture partner of MiJuEun's Partners, said that the rapid changes in the artificial intelligence-related sector are a time for us to test our faith. In 2025, when major artificial intelligence stocks have fallen sharply, Jin Wanster of Diva emphasized to Consumer News and Business Channel that their strong conviction in artificial intelligence investment remains unchanged over the years and that this is just a temporary phase. I feel very nervous about this situation. The thought that maybe I relied too much on the power of artificial intelligence keeps coming to mind. When Monster tests our faith, if we fall into temptation, how can we ever get back up again? I was told that I would receive a different question from others. By 2025, Open Artificial Intelligence, the creator of ChatGPT, will hold over 20% of the enterprise artificial intelligence media market share. Microsoft, a significant open artificial intelligence investor, will hold around 7%, while Google's cloud business will account for about 17%. All three of these stocks are underperforming the S&P 500 index, which has risen 6.3% this year. The Global 10 Artificial Intelligence and Technology Exchange Traded Fund ticker AIQ had a return of about 17% last Tuesday, which is significantly lower than the 27% return it posted in 2023 when artificial intelligence was booming.
This exchange-traded fund is
The main holdings are NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, and Alphabet. There are several reasons why stocks closely related to artificial intelligence have performed so well. The economic downturn triggered by the policy tightening of the Federal Reserve has increased volatility and strengthened risk aversion among investors. In addition, concerns have been raised about the profitability and efficiency issues related to artificial intelligence investments. Concerns exist that if an economic downturn occurs, the revenues of tech companies relying on optimism could be adversely impacted. Historically, economic recessions have affected all sectors. A recession-proof or recession-benefiting market segment is extremely uncommon. Jim Munster is speaking. Most artificial intelligence investors are looking at what the artificial intelligence landscape will look like after 312 months, and he explained that this is why they are investing again. Even before Sync's recent no-code policy announcement, there was a lull in artificial intelligence investment. QJongta, DeepSeek's head model, has outperformed OpenAI's flagship Primetime in multiple tests, demonstrating impressive capabilities. This model is known to have been trained with $60 million using NVIDIA artificial intelligence chips. Despite the impressive figure, concerns have been raised that large-scale United States technology companies cannot attract sufficient investment. In comparison, major American tech companies are planning to invest more than $30 billion in artificial intelligence this year alone. Some industries, such as metal platforms, have shown partial benefits from artificial intelligence adoption, but Truist Securities pointed out that it is difficult to quantify those effects. Despite high valuation concerns, investors remain optimistic and continue buying. According to Toronto Dominion Cowen and Wolf Research, investors have responded positively to Microsoft and Amazon's data center expansion plans, further fueling investor sentiment. Data centers are essential infrastructure that support the operation of large language models and generative artificial intelligence. Soane Belton, a GAMCO Investors portfolio manager, stated that new market emergence leads to short-term volatility and diverse interpretations due to the difficulty in predicting growth duration. Therefore, he explained that it is a favorable environment for taking profits at the moment. Apple's intelligence executive, MiJuEun Apple, said that as Apple supports its own artificial intelligence platform, investor confidence has increased even more. Apple Intelligence announced that last year's Worldwide Developers Conference was set for release with the iPhone 16 in 2024. After delays and concerns, the launch has been postponed to 2026. Tim Cook said that cloud growth alone is not enough to boost investor confidence. The public cloud industry had been growing rapidly, but after the financial crisis, it seems that the main reason for the adjustment in the value of the cloud industry in 2022 was due to this. Amazon's market cap also decreased in 2022. Previous translation. Jim Munster remains optimistic, believing that the transformative potential of artificial intelligence will be realized despite temporary setbacks. He expects that over the next 12 months, as the global economic environment improves and governments around the world cooperate with high-profile companies, there will be increased investment in artificial intelligence projects. Even though there may be some short-term volatility in global artificial intelligence hyperscaler sales, there is potential for significant growth over the coming years. Even if you only capture $60 billion in artificial intelligence, if you can dominate that market, it is possible to build $1 trillion business. Ben 10 also warned that Amazon and Microsoft's data center expansion alone does not guarantee an increase in artificial intelligence demand. Such a plan is based on expectations of demand several years in advance, so it is difficult to say that current pipeline activity reflects short-term demand. In an already uncertain market, such news only increases the sense of instability. UBS predicted that in the future, artificial intelligence investments will expand beyond companies like Visa, NVIDIA Meta, Microsoft, and Alphabet, and that new growth momentum will emerge. UBS predicted that the proportion of artificial intelligence investment by companies like Visa, which was only 20% in 2023, will rise to over 40% by 2025. They also said that the rise of new artificial intelligence players in China, such as NeoCloud, will contribute to this trend. This is Hamadi from the United States. Days before my college graduation, a new tech product called CityPhone was introduced at a downtown event. CityPhone was a wireless phone mainly for outgoing calls, and although it was a short-lived fad, it was a new technology that captured the attention of people who wanted to be trendy and stand out, along with pagers and beepers. However, it didn't last long. Once cell phones became widespread, CityPhone quickly disappeared, becoming a relic of the past. Currently, it appears that an excessive number of people are depending on CityPhone for communication, similar to before. Personally, I think that artificial intelligence will have an impact similar to when the iPhone replaced feature phones and the entire internet landscape changed as a result. While the internet solved information inequality, artificial intelligence has the potential to directly change the world by addressing the concentration of knowledge and information among a select few. In my opinion, The widespread use of artificial intelligence in the United States enables people to communicate with acquaintances, have conversations, and receive advice on various aspects of their lives, helping them get the assistance they need. Self-driving cars, humanoid robots in homes, and smart environments were recently becoming a reality. This world is approaching us. Just like we imagined, when that day comes, self-driving cars and humanoid robots will become part of our daily lives, and many sensors, batteries, power supplies, and data centers will be needed to build and operate smart glasses. Many companies will become investors, and many investors who are already involved in these industries will also become investors together. Thank you.